Welcome to the Binge Eating to Food Freedom podcast for driven hearts and minds. If you pour your best self into everything you do, and yet food takes up so much energy that it pulls you away from what matters most, you're in the right place. I'm Katie Papo, and I'm here to help you create a healthy relationship with food that supports you to live your highest and best life. And for an extra edge, become a Food Freedom Insider. Each week, I'll give you free, practical wisdom you can actually use in your daily life and more. Just head to katiepapo.com/resources or check the show notes. Without further ado, let's dive into the episode. Hello, and welcome to another episode. This week, I'm sharing an interview that I did recently with Lucia Tiffany, who is a diabetes reversal expert, and she invited me to be part of her series. I have a history of helping people reverse diabetes as well, specifically when it comes to the cravings piece. So understanding the psychological, emotional, physiological layers of food cravings is such an important part of healing. So this episode will apply to anyone who struggles with that compulsive, out of control feeling around food. We'll talk about cravings, we'll talk about binge urges, and the beginning steps to creating a life without them. And I'll also put the link to Lucia's website in the show notes too, in case you want to check her out. So without further ado, let's dive into the episode.
Welcome to today's episode of Expert Diabetes Reversal, how to end the cycle of cravings, crash diets, and sugar struggles for good. I'm happy to introduce today's expert, Katie Papo. I'm so glad you're here with us.
Thank you for having me.
We are going to be talking about how to master food cravings and binge urges without willpower or restriction. You know, Katie has helped thousands of people across the world to heal their relationship with food. Through her signature programs and her Binge Eating to Food Freedom podcast, she offers practical steps to not only overcome binge eating and compulsive overeating, but to outgrow it. Her methods include zero food restrictions or food rules and lead to healthy and sustainable habits. Her clients regularly transform 10, 20, or 30 years of food struggles. So tell us a little bit. How did you get started with your interest in this area of lifestyle and health, Katie?
Well, I think for a lot of us, it starts with ourself, right? I grew up not just experiencing this myself, but also witnessing it with my mom.
Mm.
So my mom struggled with obesity, and all I wanted to do as a kid was to be able to help. I got very involved in the weight loss world. And I worked in weight loss, started as a fitness trainer and a yoga teacher. And then it sort of evolved where I was the director of weight loss resort programs. I don't know if you remember back
Mm.
when The Biggest Loser first came out, and there were those kind of immersion programs. It wasn't as boot campy, it was more wellness oriented. And just like my mom had experienced, people would come in and they would lose a whole bunch of weight and feel super proud of themselves. They'd feel better than ever. And then throughout the year, they'd start to gain it back and gain it back and gain it back. And then they'd be back next summer weighing more possibly than even before. So at first, I kept going deeper into this world of weight loss. But then what I noticed for myself, as I got deeper into this world, my own cravings started heightening. And I got to the point where I felt like a total fraud. I would lead workshops on how to lose weight, and then I would go binge eat an entire pizza in my car. I got to the point where it was every single night I was binge eating on cookies. I could not have just one. If I had just one, it would open the whole floodgates. I'd eat the whole box. It got to the point where I just felt so wildly out of control. And because of that, I became terrified because I knew that all it would take was just one triggering food for any amount of work or effort that I put in to just unravel. So I became exhausted. I started questioning my own sanity. I believed I had zero discipline, zero willpower, no self control. I'd say I'm a food addict, or I'd say I'm a binge eater. And then it became even worse because I started reinforcing these disempowering identities. about myself. And I also knew I really couldn't continue in the line of work that I was doing and feel okay and in integrity about it if I was secretly struggling this much myself. So that's really how this all started. I had no idea what to do.
So I'm curious, what were the steps that you took to get freedom?
Well, one thing that I learned, and I'm so grateful that I learned this because I was being in the weight loss world under the impression that the more I could restrict, the more control I would have over my eating. So, a lot of my go to initially was to create really strict food rules for myself because I would say these are the only thing keeping me in line. What I later learned, which changed the course of everything, is that restriction is actually the number one cause of binges. I didn't know this, but if you think of it like a pendulum, if we restrict it in an extreme way to one side and we pull that pendulum all the way to one side, it's only a matter of time. Once we let go, that pendulum is swinging all the way to the
Mhm,
opposite side. So it's almost like those binges kind of balance out in a way that
mhm,
restriction. So I recognize that a lot of the methods that I was using for weight loss and for health, these restrictions triggering the big binges because I tell myself, Katie, starting tomorrow, no chocolate. 30 days, you are on a no chocolate fast. Okay, let's say tomorrow's Monday and I'm not starting till Monday. What am I going to do on Sunday? I'm going to go out. I'm going to buy
yeah,
all the chocolate because I know I'm going to miss it tomorrow. So
mm,
we can see how it's not even just being on a diet, right? That's a very
mhm,
formal set of restrictions, but even just feeling, and I use this word a lot, scarcity around food. If I have scarcity around this chocolate, I got to get it all in now while I can. So if we have a long history of dieting and food rules and food restrictions, we're basically building this pattern of food scarcity in ourselves. And so what does
that's
the
really
binge
interesting.
represent? The binge represents abundance, right? The binge, finally, freedom. It's the backlash.
Yeah.
So I didn't realize that I was positioning myself so that my body and my mind were working against me. So
Mm,
the first big step in all of this was to take a step back, look at my overall relationship with food and say, how do I get all these different parts of myself, my mind, my body, myself? How do we get on the same team here? So I'm not constantly getting
mm,
these backlashes. And that's really where I started. I had created a self-fulfilling prophecy. I'd say, I'm a sugar addict. So see, I ate one cookie and then it opened the floodgates and I ate the whole box. See, that's the proof. I am a sugar addict. Meanwhile, I didn't realize that I had trained this emergency response in myself around sugar. So instead of me saying I need to keep the sugar out of the house, I retrained my nervous system's response to food. So I didn't have these emergency reactions anymore. Am I talking too much?
no, this is great. I love it. It's
Okay.
very valuable stuff.
So one thing that I thought was, okay, if scarcity is driving so many of my binges from a psychological level, and there are more causes than just the psychological, but let's just focus on that for now. Let's say psychologically, I'm creating this backlash for myself where I say, you can't have chocolate tomorrow, so I eat all the chocolate today. What's the opposite of scarcity?
Abundant.
Yes, thank you. The opposite of scarcity is abundance. And this was fascinating to me because I would look at people, they would have like a few bites of cake and then they put their fork down and they don't finish it. And I didn't understand how this was possible for people. It was like they weren't even thinking about it. Meanwhile, I'm thinking to myself, I already finished my whole cake. Are they going to finish that? Should I ask to finish their cake? And I'm all I'm thinking about is cake. So in my head, I said, this is my goal because I don't want to have to forbid myself from eating cake forever. I want to be like these people who I saw as normal eaters who could have a few bites and be very satisfied. And what I realized is they have a genuine energy of abundance around food. So it's not about the quantity of food, right? Because someone could eat an enormous amount of food, but feel scarcity the whole time. Oh, I shouldn't be eating this. This is bad for me. Starting tomorrow, I got to get myself under control. Where somebody else could eat a very small amount of chocolate and they're like, oh, that was perfect. I don't need more than
Mhm,
that. That's abundance. So it's not
mhm.
about the quantity, it's about our internal state. So that's where all my work started turning inward. It's like it's a internal process.
That is so interesting. And I believe that you've touched on some really important points that many of our listeners are also dealing with. I remember in my early adult life having several different roommates that really struggled with anorexia and, disordered relationships with food. And I remember back then, I kind of started looking into it as like, what's triggering this? Because it's like, I didn't understand it. And then as I was researching it, looking into it, one of the characteristics that kept coming up was when someone didn't feel like they were in control of their life, they would take control of their food because it was like, nobody can make me eat, right? It's like that's a place where you had control. And when I started thinking about it, and these were people I knew pretty well, and I'd start thinking about the stories they tell me about, like the families they came from and what the dynamic was like. And in every case, this was definitely an attempt to just have some control in their life because so many other aspects of their life felt totally out of control.
Oh, absolutely.
I really appreciate how you brought that in, and knowing that there's a reason for this. It's like you're not just crazy. It's like it's not just you don't have enough willpower. There's other wounds, there's other trauma or other early life experiences that have created this need to either control the food you're eating, or as you said, feel like I might not be able to indulge in the same way if I, go into with these rules or these restrictions or this particular diet. And so none of those things provide permanent fixes because they haven't really dealt with the root problem.
Exactly. And you know what's wild about what you just said regarding the willpower? A lot of the people, I would say the majority of people who I work with who claim they have no willpower around food, they have so much willpower in every other area of life. Every other area of life. They can do anything they set their minds to, which is part of the reason why they're so darn frustrated that this is the one area, which should be simple. It's just eating. But when we apply willpower to this, and then we cultivate that energy of scarcity within us around food, it's actually the willpower that works against us. It's like we're trying to put out this fire with gasoline. And
Mm.
so it's not the problem that they have no willpower. It's just more of a strategy issue. It's just not strategic for willpower to be the solution for this particular type of problem.
And I even tell people in other areas, willpower is usually not your long-term solution. It's habits that are your long-term solution. And whether it's habits of thinking or habits of behavior, it's all about those habits because those are what really drive us, like what, 98% of the time or something. And as we're talking about dealing with cravings and these dieting kinds of issues in this event, I want you to talk a little bit about how you see cravings as our friend. And when you feel really out of control around food, how do we understand what these cravings are all about?
Yeah. So this is a big mental shift for a lot of people. It sure was for me. Because for me, cravings, not only were cravings my enemy, but I was terrified of them. I was absolutely terrified because I knew that as soon as they come, that now puts me in a position of powerlessness because the cravings were so strong, there was just no way. And even if, like you said, willpower wise, willpower is only going to carry us so far.
Yeah,
And how many times have we heard people say, I've been good all day, but then at night, because you've exhausted all of your willpower. And if we only
exactly.
rely on willpower, it's a finite resource. So cravings, the mental shift is first that we see cravings not as, maybe you're not able to see them as friends yet, but if you can at least see them not as enemies but as messengers, that your cravings are here to teach you something.
Mm,
So what I found is different things can cause cravings. Sometimes it's that psychological restriction, like I talked about. I might not be thinking about chocolate until someone says, oh, well, you can't have any for the next month. Now, suddenly, I have a craving because I was told I can't have any. So it might come from a psychological level. It might come from a biological level, right? Maybe we're not eating enough. And then our body is telling us, you need to eat more. So it generates these cravings. Other times, and this can be true for sugar quite a bit, Let's say it's three
Mhm.
o'clock in the afternoon, I'm low on energy. So we go to the sugar automatically, right? Because that's the habit, like
Yeah.
you said. But if we really were to tune in that moment, maybe what we're looking for is energy, but maybe sugar isn't the best source of that. Maybe we just need rest. And rest can give us energy. A lot of people who are addicted to sugar don't rest.
Mhm.
It's just
That's
a
a
pattern I've
really
seen.
Yeah, I love that because it's actually an American pattern these days. Most people aren't getting good enough quantity or quality of rest, but maybe we don't think about that in relationship to cravings for food. And I love what you said about how maybe you're actually craving rest, and that's how you need to get your energy. That's really, I think, revolutionary.
Yeah, right? And then there could be a more straightforward thing nutrition-wise. Like I
Mhm.
see, and I've experienced this myself, people who are on low fruit diets, when I did that one time, I've never craved sugar so much in my life. Same thing with carbs, right? You go on a low carb diet, I see it again and again. The people who crave the donuts and the breads and the muffins and the cookies and all that stuff, they have a history of low carb diets. So
Mhm.
it's like they've been
Interesting.
training their body. So your body needs the carbs, but then you're craving them in the worst ways
Mhm,
because
mhm.
now you've cut out sweet potatoes and oats and fruit, but you're eating cookies. So a
Yeah.
lot of times I think in the quest for health, we actually can sabotage our health sometimes because
Mhm.
we're either nutritionally deprived and that causes a craving, we're psychologically deprived, that causes a craving, we're rest deprived, that causes a craving. So the more we can see our cravings as messengers, then we can actually use them to inform our next step
Mm.
and actually learn how to prioritize ourselves and take care of ourselves. And then the more we see our own patterns, the more we can be proactive about those
Yeah.
things.
Oh, that's so good. And I think that's really, really on point with what we're talking about here. Really understanding how do we interpret the cravings. And I think you've given us some really good tips on that. Now, I know many of the people that you work with have struggled with binge eating, for example, for 20, 30, 40 more years before they come to work with you. What advice would you give to someone who feels out of control around food right now, who wants to change, but they're not sure where to start?
That's a good question. When you're coming at this kind of problem and you've had a really long history of struggles,
Mhm.
what happens just on an emotional level is we're coming at this from a place of disempowerment. We might come at this feeling like a failure. I would say these disempowering things to myself, not realizing that there really wasn't anything wrong with me. My strategy was terrible, but that doesn't make me a weak person. It doesn't make me not have any discipline. And especially if you look at your life and you can see, well, I was able to succeed in this. And when I put my mind to something, I can do this. And food is like the main outlier. Chances are you have a strategy problem.
Mhm.
So I think when you embark on a journey like this, it's important to come at this from a place of compassion for yourself. Because if we come into it from a place of blame, that tends to just backfire. So I think forgiveness is an important first step for everybody who's been struggling with something chronically. Like when I was sitting in the car eating a whole pizza, I thought I'm a fraud. I'm the worst. I didn't realize that the environment I was in was generating intense cravings. I was just in
Mhm.
constant restriction mode. I was teaching it, I was living it, I was surrounded by it. So, of course, the pendulum swung super far that way and then it swung back to binge land. So, it's just a normal human reaction. And I've even seen it. I fostered animals for a long time. And I once fostered a rabbit whose owner passed away while the rabbit was in the cage or the crate or whatever, and she wasn't found for over a week. So
Yeah.
this rabbit was on the brink of starvation. And when she came to me, she was already doing much better. However, there were two rabbits. They came as a little couple. And one rabbit had a very normal eating behavior. But she, because she had endured this starvation, she was so aggressive in making sure she got the food first. She overate all the
Mhm.
time. So I say all of this, don't take these quote unquote failures personally. Like this is animal nature, this is human nature, that when we're in extreme scarcity around food, we're going to react this way. Even my rabbit Sophie reacted this way. So to first stop putting the blame on yourself, and then you're going to be in more of a position of readiness where you can embark on this journey, not like I need to overcome this and I need to learn how to fight my mind and fight my body and win, but rather how do I approach this as a team so everybody works together? And I think starting a journey like this with that kind of mindset makes an enormous difference.
Absolutely. I totally agree. I think you said something really interesting. You talked about the importance of bringing forgiveness in. And I think in the context of what you were saying, you're talking about being able to forgive yourself. Like when you fail, when you don't, live up to whatever it was you had set as a goal. But I think it can go even deeper than that, in that sometimes we need to forgive people in our lives for what they've done to us if we want to let go of the emotional triggers behind some of these eating behaviors. And so I really love that idea of looking at ourselves and saying, is there somebody or something that I need to extend forgiveness to so that I can enjoy real freedom? Because I do think that real freedom is something we can experience when we let go of the resentment or the hurt or the offense that we often carry around even without thinking about it.
Yeah.
So I really appreciated that. Katie, I'm just so glad that you came and were able to spend some time with us here today. I think this has been super valuable. And I really want to say thank you for sharing your time and your expertise with us today. Really appreciate
Oh,
it.
thank you, Lucia. So thank you for inviting me and for leading this whole event.
Oh, well, then you're very sweet. And we really do appreciate your participation and contribution here. And remember, as you're listening to us, that health is wealth and it comes by choice, not by chance. So thank you for spending some time with us here today.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Lucia.